Invincible Mumu by Han Jung-Wheelia. Chapter 135. To the Imperial Palace. Part 1. The person holding the unknown man was Mumu. Mumu? Weak. The man whose head was caught made strange sounds, seemingly wanting to be let go. Ma Yunhua, who saw this, was shocked. How can he handle this monster so easily? It was shocking. She had learned about Mumu's strength due to his victory over 2 of the 4 great warriors, but the reality shocked her. Mumu then asked, "What is this?" Hearing Mumu's question, Ma Yunhua shook her head. "I don't know. We suddenly met him." "Is that so? Then I will ask." Swish. Mumu turned the man's head toward him and raised his face to his eye level. "Who are you?" Roll. His bizarre eyes focused on Mumu in interest at that moment. "Your eyes move strangely." As if answering that, the man responded, Mu. "Do you know me?" Found you. Found you? An unknown man was saying that he had found him at their first meeting. Mumu was puzzled at this as the strange man's eyes trembled. And confirmed. Confirmed? What are you talking about? Before Mumu could ask further, the shaking man suddenly kicked out. Whack. Crack. The kick had aimed for Mumu's neck, but Mumu didn't even budge. Instead, it was the man's feet that were trembling. Ma Yunhua, who was there, could tell that the man's foot was cracked from the sound of it. Mumu then asked, "What are you doing?" Staying. "You are a strange one." Dud. At that moment, Mumu turned his gaze toward the origin of the sound. It was the man's foot. Chuck. The man's calf muscles looked like they had torn but also looked stronger. Quack. With his strength enhanced, he moved his leg to attempt to break Mumu's neck again. "You want to break my neck?" Mumu's neck didn't even budge. Instead, he felt annoyed. The man had seemed to be fighting 3 of his seniors, so he asked who he was. However, he longer felt curious about him. "I think it will be better to put you to sleep." Mumu rolled 2 of his fingers to flick the man's forehead. Ma Yunhua frowned at this. Flick? As she thought this, Mumu flicked his fingers. Talk. At that moment, the man's forehead was hit, and his entire body was slammed back to the ground. Quang. The man, who had hit the ground, bounced back up and scared Ma Yunhua. Even if he hadn't used his full strength, she couldn't understand how a single flick could do this. The man, now with a dark bruise in the middle of his forehead, was splayed out on the ground. This was unbelievable. Ma Yunhua bit her lip and shyly said to Mumu, "Thank you for the hell." Flinch. She immediately turned her head. It was because of a sudden ominous feeling that she felt. She frowned as she saw the unknown man get up. Crack. He was getting up, and even the forehead that Mumu had flicked was recovering. This was happening at such a frightening speed that even Guyong Siren and Tang Soso looked shocked. What? Is he really a human? How can a broken bone heal that fast? They were unable to comprehend this. However, that wasn't all. JJJKKK. The man's upper body began to swell as his shirt was torn off. His muscles also began to swell abnormally, something that seemed eerily similar to. This is? Oh? This was similar to Mumu. If there was a difference, Mumu's muscles would look dense when swollen, while this man's muscles only swelled up in certain parts. It seemed as if he was only growing the muscles that he needed. Mumu frowned at this. Is Mumu surprised at the resemblance? They took Mumu's reaction as such. The fact that Mumu could freely manipulate his muscles was common knowledge in the academy. They had also seen it happen a few times. But the mysterious monster in front of him was doing the same thing. Just what the hell is this? Was he related to Mumu? Everyone was puzzled, as Mumu said. "I don't like it." Uh? You are too biased towards certain muscles. Ma Yunhua frowned and looked at Mumu. He didn't feel doubts at the sight of this monster manipulating his muscles but was instead upset that he was doing it wrong. The monster bent his knees. Crack. The lowered body generated enough strength that the ground below him cracked. Then, like an exploding volcano, the monster jumped toward Mumu. Bang! In an instant, the monster reached Mumu. This is bad. Quack. Quang. That was what the girls thought, but the monster had instead sunk into the ground. On top of that, Mumu's pose indicated that he had hit the monster with his palm. When they looked at the monster's back, it was twisted as if the bones there were broken. His muscles had swelled up, but he couldn't reach Mumu at all. At that moment, the twisted bones that had been crushed moved around with a cracking sound. Such an interesting body. Clench. Mumu grabbed the head of the monster who was recovering and said, "Can you recover even if your head is broken?" The monster's eyes, which had been concentrating on healing, rolled around and fell on Mumu. With this body strength, it can't. At that, Mumu titled his head. What was that supposed to mean? He was puzzled when the monster smiled. I guess you are nothing. The monster's voice, which had been stuttering, now came clearly. At those words, Mumu asked him, "What are you talking about?" "I will see you again. My alter ego." Pack. As soon as he said those words, the monster's head exploded. It didn't end there. Papak. In a chain reaction, the body also began to explode. Everyone couldn't hide their surprise. What? The body suddenly? Who would have imagined that a normal person would have blown up their body and died? Fortunately, Mumu appeared unharmed, as the explosion didn't seem to have been strong enough to harm him. Mumu, who was covered in blood, had a strange look. My alter ego? The last words the monster said lingered in his head. What did that mean? Late at night. Inside the dormitories for officials. Eugene Sung, the royal inspector and older brother of Jin Hyuk and Mumu, was packing his things. The remaining officials would withdraw from the academy early the following day. The mastermind behind the arson incident had been captured. They had then concluded that no other potential culprits were left in the academy, and therefore Jin Sung announced their plans to return. All that was left had been the order from the palace. He had also already conveyed that order. But is that really the order of my father? What do you mean by that? Jin Sung had naturally assumed that the lady would follow her father's orders, but instead, she seemed suspicious of it. When he had asked for the reason, she had replied, "No. If it is my father's order, then I indeed should go back. However, I must prepare to return, so give me enough time to do that." Because of this, he had given her 3 days. It was the amount of time that she had requested. They were to leave tomorrow morning, but he had yet to see her again. Instead of the princess, Mumu had come instead. My head hurts. Mumu had appeared with the smell of blood clinging to his body even after a wash and had asked him, "May I come to the imperial palace?" Mumu had asked to be taken along to the palace. However, entry to the palace was not something that Eugene Sung could decide alone. So he replied that even if Mumu was his family, he could not take just anyone into the palace without permission. To which Mumu had given him unexpected information. In the imperial palace, there may be people who are on the side of the arsonists who set fire to the dorms. What? Are you telling the truth? Yes. Mumu told him that he had gotten this information from a spy called Kong Mui. If that was true, then this was something that couldn't be overlooked. Because of that, Jin Sung decided to take Mumu with him. If he got permission to allow him entry under the pretext of being a witness under investigation, he would be able to bring him in. I wonder if it will go well, though. Unlike the academy, the imperial palace wasn't somewhere filled with many warriors, and he was taking Mumu to such a place. If he had been an ordinary student, it wouldn't be such a big deal, but the situation had changed drastically just a couple of days ago. This naive-looking kid defeated 2 of the 4 great warriors. It was hard to believe. Even Eugene Sung was shocked at this. He knew that the 4 great warriors were people at the pinnacle of the martial world, the best of the best. It was extremely surprising that Mumu, who didn't even learn martial arts properly, had defeated them. It will become quite noisy. Perhaps there would be those who show interest in Mumu, while others would think that the child would need to be controlled. And that would make things annoying. Would it be better to hide Mumu's identity? He wasn't sure which was the better way. Instead of revealing it now, he would simply push it back to a later time. What bothered him was that the Imperial Palace wouldn't let someone like Mumu keep his identity hidden. And this was what he was concerned about. Knock. And someone knocked at his door. Who is it? Royal Inspector. Jin Sung hurriedly opened the door upon hearing that familiar voice. In front of him stood a beautiful woman. It was Cho Nayeon, no, Hong Nayeon. I greet the lady. As Jin Sung was trying to bow, she waved her hand to indicate that it was fine. In response, Jin Sung took her inside the room and asked, "Princess, are you all ready?" At this question, she hesitated as she said, "Inspector." "Yes, Princess. I am sorry, but I don't think I can make it to the Imperial Palace." Jin Sung was visibly shocked. The lady had asked for 3 days, and he had waited for her. Now she was saying that she could not go? As he looked puzzled, she said, "I don't know if you believe me, but if I head to the palace now, I might put my father in danger." Hearing her words, he frowned. He couldn't understand the meaning behind her words, so he asked, "Princess, I don't understand why you would say that. I am sorry if this comes out as rude, but may I ask why?" "I cannot tell you that." "Why?" "I cannot give the details, but I will tell you one thing. If you did receive a secret order from my father, then it can be that even you, Inspector, are in danger as well." "I may also be in danger?" In response to Jin Sung's question, she said, "It means that something will threaten your life when you return to the palace." This was what she was concerned about. If she was with him, he could be in danger. Jin Sung groaned. There seemed to be something she couldn't openly speak about, so there was a strong probability that something was happening within the palace. Seeing her this anxious, Jin Sung couldn't help it. "If you are worried about an attack in the middle of our journey back, you don't have to worry too much. I will protect you at the cost of my life." "Sir, I am also a disciple here. I know better than anyone how strong you are. But you don't know them. If they put their minds to it, well, nothing can be done then." Just know this one thing, Princess." "What do you mean?" Jin Sung then told her in a low voice. "You don't have to worry about an ambush." My younger brother Mumu is coming to the palace." Chapter 136. To the Imperial Palace. Part 2. Early morning. Mumu packed his belongings to join the caravan of officials heading back to the Imperial Palace. In order to see him off, Jin Hyuk had gotten up early and exited the dorms with Mumu. When they stepped outside, they saw that Moilwa was waiting for them. Ilwa? What? Did you think I wouldn't see you off?" Moilwa clicked her tongue as she looked at Mumu. She had said she wasn't coming yesterday evening, yet here she was. She approached Mumu and said, "Be safe." "Yes, thanks. Look for those aiming for that thing in the palace. Things like that might hurt you, but be careful when doing everything." "Yes. The Imperial Palace is different from this place. It is somewhere where powerful people from around the nation are gathered. If you find someone acting favorably to you, do not easily trust them." "Yes." Moilwa checked him again. "Your answers are short." "Is that so?" "Clench." Moilwa grabbed Mumu by the collar and shook him. "This older sister is worried about you, so answer sincerely." Fine." Mumu replied with a wide smile. No matter the situation, Jin Hyuk and Moilwa treated him normally. Mumu, who wasn't very sociable, knew they were sincerely good people, unlike the others, and was grateful to them. Do not laugh. I will hit you. Moilwa shook her head as she let go of his collar. She then passed off a package that was next to her. This is nothing special, just jerky I got from the diner lady and some extra clothes. For real? You will have no clothes left because of those muscles, so here. Ilwa. Thank you. Huh. If you are so grateful, buy me some jewelry or something from the palace. Yes. I will. Mumu accepted the bundle that was the symbol of Moilwa's meticulous care. Jin Hyuk then sighed and said, I wonder if there is someone who can really threaten you, but as Miss Mo said, be careful no matter what you do. Especially be wary of people who will try to take advantage of you. Yes. You are not a child, so any more words and it will be like nagging, so have a good trip. Are you saying that as a compliment? And no, Mississippi. What do you mean no? This time Moilwa grabbed Jin Hyuk by the collar, making Mumu smile. The more I see you two, it seems both of you get along well. What? What is that supposed to mean? Moilwa's angry face became flushed red. Jin Hyuk also looked shocked and unsure of what to do since he was now conscious of her. Not caring about their reactions, Mumu said, I will be back soon. In the meantime, take care of Harryang, who is in the infirmary. Goodbye. Ta-da-da. With that, Mumu ran off. Looking at Mumu run, the two slightly shocked people sighed together. They weren't worried about him being hurt. What they were concerned about was what Mumu would do in the imperial palace. At the spot where the guards were stationed, more people were waiting for Mumu. They were Deputy Headmaster Dan Pilhu, his men, and Kong Mui. They waited in advance because Mumu said he needed to take Kong Mui. Oh. Deputy. Mumu raised his hand and greeted Dan Pilhu. Seeing Mumu smiling brightly as if he was going off to play made Dan Pilhu feel odd. For him to go to the imperial palace at such a time. Dan Pilhu clicked his tongue. The buzz about Mumu had been something of a constant within the academy. For people like Mumu, the academy was typically meaningless. But now things were turning strange. The conversation between the members of the academy had gone towards bringing Mumu in as a special teacher or something into the academy. If he is an academy student, isn't it a loss for the academy to just send him out as any other student when he is called the youngest of the great warriors? Yes. We need to hire Mumu as the academy's special teacher. I agree. Most of the teachers were talking about this. But this was the first time such a thing happened in the academy. All of that made this decision difficult. It was because hiring Mumu didn't seem like the right thing to do, especially when he was much stronger than the deputy and headmaster. So embarrassing. This was an issue that needed to be further discussed. After sighing, Dan Pilhu approached Mumu and gave him something. It was a flat wooden box. This is? At Mumu's question, Dan Pilhu opened the box's lid and said, I had difficulty finding it considering we were running out of time. This? Yes, a human skin mask. Inside the wooden box was the face of a middle-aged man with a beard. Can you get me a human skin mask? Human skin mask? Yes. I feel like we need to hide the identity of Mumu. Mumu's older brother, Jin Sung, had been the one who requested this, and the deputy had accepted it. The rumors about Mumu were sure to spread rapidly. He knew that problems would occur once he reached the palace. I understand. In response, the deputy urgently searched for an appropriate mask. Despite it being done hastily, the quality was quite good. This mask can handle anything from sweating to facial expressions. I spent quite a lot. Dan Pilhu said this casually, but this was truly a mask that he had put a lot of effort into. The mask wouldn't allow sweat to escape, and the expressions would also align. It was not like a cheap mask that would give off an awkward expression. If you feel so grateful for it, pay it back to me, slowly. As expected of the deputy. This was just a way for the deputy to strengthen their relationship by continuing to help Mumu. Dan Pilhu explained in detail how to use and care for the mask. Mumu then put it on. And now Mumu was looking like a middle-aged man with strong features. I got it in a hurry. Dan Pilhu clicked his tongue at this. Mumu was taller than most people and, with such a face, made him very distinctly unapproachable. Then, I will leave, deputy. Mumu. Yes? It would be better if you don't speak. Speak? Right. Your voice doesn't match the face. The face he had on would fit a harsh voice, but Mumu's voice was still of a 17-year-old boy. Not to mention that Mumu's voice was softer compared to other boys. If you can, just stay silent. Mumu, who listened to his words, stayed silent. After all the preparations were done, Mumu took the tied-up Kong Mui and headed to the office where the officials were gathered. The gates opened as the officials led by Eugene Sung exited the academy. Someone was hiding in the castle walls and was watching the procession closely. Finally, they are coming. This mysterious figure, who confirmed their movement, entered the forest path and headed off somewhere. Damn it. Kong Mui was walking while restrained and glared at Mumu, who was riding in front. If he could use his power, he could escape these chains at any time. But there was no way to get away from this monster. How did this happen? Wasn't he the one who was destined to become the next lord? Yet, no matter how much he thought about it, he couldn't understand how such a monster appeared here. Crack. Pathetic. The one in the imperial palace, that one would laugh at him. Of course, their laughter won't last long once Mumu comes into the picture. He will be the same. Under Mumu's hands, everything would be the same. It was because Mumu had defeated 2 of the 4 great warriors. Kong Mui sighed and turned to the woman. It was the princess, Hong Nayan. That girl is the daughter. This was unexpected. He had been in the same academy for 2 years and didn't even realize it. He knew that there was a female disciple of one of the top 10 warriors in the academy. But the fact that she could hide her identity until now indicated that she was no ordinary woman. Such trickery. The daughter of a king who had hidden her identity was now returning to the palace. Kong Mui could guess what this meant. Her existence was at the center of a power struggle within the palace. And they believed that such a person just needs 10 guards to return safely. Perhaps her return to the imperial palace would not be happening quickly. He could guess the larger picture behind this. However, those who planned this probably didn't predict one variable. Kong Mui looked at Mumu. Ahem. Mumu yawned while dozing off on his horse. Seeing this, Hong Nayan whispered to Eugene Sung. That face doesn't suit him at all. It looks like they got it in a hurry. I see. Hong Nayan was told beforehand that this middle-aged man with a threatening face was Mumu. Maybe that was why she thought that Mumu didn't fit the mask. This time, Jin Sung said to Hong Nayan. But you know, no, Mississippi. Do you really not want to ride in the carriage? Yes. I am fine here. But nothing good comes from being noticed. If it was her true status, she would need to ride the carriage on their way back. However, in this situation where there were only so few escorts, she indicated that she would rather ride a horse. As a result, even the palace guards wore regular clothes to avoid attention. At first glance, they didn't seem like a procession of officials. Jin Sung understood what Hong Nayan said about the procession potentially being a target because she was with them. If my lady's words are true, then it can be said that we have been caught up in a mess. Jin Sung was able to infer one thing from her warning. Someone was aiming for her life and knew her identity. However, 2 other things can only be guessed at. One motive was to keep her father in check by using her safety as bait. The second was the probability of a strong external force being hidden within the palace. It is hard to know who it is, though. Jin Sung hoped that he could guess who it was. If the enemy was hidden inside, the guards could also be suspects. Muyang, who had come with him, had said that this order was given by His Highness. Under normal circumstances, even if her identity was thoroughly hidden from everyone, just 10 guards to escort a member of the imperial family was incomprehensible. Sigh. Because of this, he couldn't help but sigh and worry constantly. Thankfully Mumu had come along with him. Since I asked Mumu to protect the lady, the worst-case scenario can at least be avoided. Mumu had defeated 2 of the 4 great warriors. Who could win against him? Of course, since his identity had also been hidden, there surely would be an attempt against them. I cannot let go of my focus because I don't know how or when they will come for us. Jin-sung was on edge as he didn't know if anything would happen on their way back. A few hours had passed, and the sun was setting before they knew it. The procession headed down alongside a cliff face into a valley. A man wearing a leopard coat watched their movement from a high place. The man smiled while looking down. Finally here. The man had been waiting for them for a long time. He had only been given one person to target. Kill everyone except the woman who was from the palace. It was an easy thing to do. An ambush in a valley with such a small group of escorts. When the man reached out his hand, a waiting subordinate brought him a large bow. He held the bow and an arrow as he pulled back the strings. The target was clearly visible. You are sleeping so soundly. Despite being so far away, he could see a guard dozing off. This gave him confidence that he could handle this mission. The arrow will pierce his head, and things will go according to plan. Yes, Hyung. Behind this man were 40 people dressed like bandits. They looked like bandits on the outside, but each of them was clearly talented at martial arts. Clench. He pulled the bowstring even further as he filled the arrow with energy. Go strong right from the start. This man prided himself on being the best when it came to the bow. The arrow then left the man's hand. Pang! The arrow flew true towards the sleeping guard when he released the string. 40 men waited in anticipation. But the man and his subordinates' eyes all widened in surprise. The man whose head was supposed to have been pierced by the arrow had instead caught it without even looking. My arrow was caught without even being looked at? How could a sleeping man catch that? He had even used internal energy on the arrow. The man looked confused at the situation but then turned his head to look directly at them. Flinch. Chapter 137. To the Imperial Palace. Part 3. As the 10 Imperial guards moved, one question rose in their minds. Who the hell is he? Is he actually sleeping on a horse? That was what they were wondering. A master from the academy had come along with Jin-sung. Of course, the man's real identity was Mumu, but the guards and officials didn't know that. In their eyes, however, Mumu was no different from a lazy person. I don't know who he is, but they said he's one of the academy's best. No matter how I look, he truly doesn't seem like that. He became a master just because of his face. Right. That scary face, even they were all shocked and intimidated when they saw it first. But the more one looked at it, the less intimidating it looked. According to Guak Dan, a skilled warrior among the guards, this man was nothing more than a first-rate warrior. Not a top-quality, first-rate warrior, but a particularly weak one. Definitely not one suitable to be a master at the academy. It is strange. No one attempted to speak to the person as he appeared to be mute and could not even ride a horse properly. The man couldn't even hold the reins. Wasn't that why the royal inspector helped him? Isn't this just a scam? I am dying from anxiety here. Although they didn't express it in front of Jin-sung, the officials all felt uneasy about this. There was also a female student that had come with them. Her true identity was said to be someone from the royal family. Although they had been given orders to lay down their lives for her if necessary, this all felt strange. Just the 10 of us to escort a member of the royal family? Isn't this too much of a burden on us? No matter how I look at it, this is suicide, right? I don't want to say ominous things. None of the guards there failed to recognize how unusual the situation was. Even so, many were dissatisfied with Yu Jin-sung due to his past connections with the academy. This mission only further fueled their anxiety. Pang. Their eyes collectively widened. Huh. What? Mumu, who had been napping, suddenly caught a pole-sized arrow without even raising his head, shocking everyone. But that surprise was short-lived as Yu Jin-sung shouted, "Ambush!" Chong. In response, the guards hurriedly took out their weapons and lifted their shields. Jin-sung then asked Mumu, "Where did it come from?" In an instant, everything could change. At this question, Mumu turned his head towards where the arrow had come from. It was from above this valley. Jin-sung followed his gaze and could faintly see something. Is it starting? There seemed to be assailants that were here for Hong Na-yeon. Jin-sung spoke in a voice that could only be heard by those behind him. Run with your shields up. The terrain isn't in our favor, so hurry. Kiik. A strange sound filled the air, making Jin-sung turn his head back to Mumu. Crack. At that moment, he could see Mumu's upper body beginning to swell, tearing his clothes, as the skin on his neck began to turn gray. Swish. He grabbed the pole in his hand and turned it around. The muscles around his biceps and arms were also swollen. What muscles are those? Is he going to throw it back up? The surprised guards had incredulous looks on their faces. Just looking at the cliff above them would make anyone lose hope. If he shot it with a bow, it would be impossible to reach the top, even with martial arts. Using bare hands would be out of the question. Pong! But then the air was ripped apart as the pole flew through it. The speed it was launched at seemed even faster than an arrow shot from a bow. At the same time, on top of the cliff. No? The scarred man wearing the leopard robe, who had aimed for the sleeping Mumu, frowned. Shooting an arrow down from a high place would increase its speed, but the reverse would have to face enormous resistance. And this man was throwing something that would be near impossible to reach with a bow using his bare hands? Insane. He snorted in derision and raised his hand. Throw the rock. Before he could finish his words, the man was shocked. It was because the arrow appeared right in front of him instantly. And no way. Quack. At that moment, the arrow pierced his chest. It would have been kind if it had killed him, but the arrow that had pierced him was now knocking him back. Quack. The man's body soared up along with the arrow. Pang. Ah! His screams faded into the air. Young. His subordinates could not hide their shock at seeing their leader being sent flying into the air by the arrow he had shot. In the blink of an eye, their leader turned into a dot. What does this mean? How could an arrow thrown from below do something like this? But something even more shocking happened. Quack quack wang. The arrow had moved with enough force and was followed by the sound of a tearing wind. No, to be exact, the cliff was being blown apart. The guards who were watching him couldn't close their mouths. This cannot be. The cliff where their ambushers were standing had been completely blown apart. This was unbelievable. They weren't the only ones who were shocked, either. Yu Jin-sung, who had only vaguely heard about Mumu's strength, and Hong Na-yeon were also shocked. That child's strength is this much? It wasn't just a rumor that he took down 2 of them. Seeing it with their eyes shocked them even more than the rumors. Mumu's mighty strength was not something that anyone would think a human could possess. Mumu tried to say something to his companions, who were shocked. Since there is nothing on the cliff, we can leave. That was what he wanted to say. It would be better if you don't speak. I shouldn't speak? Right. Your voice doesn't match your face. He remembered what Dan Pilhu told him. Mumu then called out to Jin-sung via a fake cough. He pointed to the cliff with a finger and then waved his index finger to the left and right. There is no one up there. That was what he wanted to say. But the eyes of the Imperial Guards who saw this clearly changed. He is strong. There is nothing wrong even after the ambush happened. This is nothing, do not worry. You saw it too, right? His pride is as great as his skills. Contrary to his intentions, the officials interpreted the signs as they wanted. Perhaps that was why, unlike before, they now trusted Mumu. They even looked at him differently as he stayed silent. Early the next day, in an area not too far from the Golden Palace in the imperial capital, a guard hastily made his way into a splendid manor. A sharp-looking middle-aged man wearing blue silk from top to bottom delivered something to an old man who was tending to his vegetables. Elder. The message has arrived. Despite those words, the old man didn't pay him any attention. Perhaps familiar with this, the middle-aged man opened up the delivered message. He then looked at the contents. The middle-aged man groaned, and the old man tending to the plants said, "It seems like something didn't happen as you hoped." As expected. It turns out that something that was supposed to be useful turned out to be fake. I have no face to show. And the money paid in advance is wasted. The old man shook his head, and the middle-aged man sighed in response. Kong Yun. He was a well-known warrior among the nobles and was praised for his martial arts, which was good enough to be considered among the top 10. The man had seemed a useful option. So how did such a person die? This is different from what I was told. Oh, Muyang was a member of the palace. According to the information he had delivered, there would only have been 10 guards and a royal inspector. He thought sending Kong Yun and his men would have been enough, but this result was unexpected. There seems to be an unknown variable involved here. What kind? I heard there are many warriors in the academy. They could have asked them for help. Pack. Hearing that, the old man got up with a smile. Ah. This means this variable wasn't predicted. At this, the middle-aged man bowed. It was my mistake. I was half right and half wrong. Half right and half wrong? Since the position of the princess was being hidden, I didn't think they would receive help from the academy. The old man's eyebrow twitched. And that is the end? The information I received was that it would only be low-level soldiers and empty words. Words. Well, Elder Byakwung is bored, so I asked for a favor. Byakwung? Yes. At this, the old man snorted and shook his head. It is like using a cow-slaying butcher to kill a hen. The giant stab, Byakwung. One of the very skilled warriors available. How much money was spent to get him? GRRNG. The old man heard the thunder overhead and looked up at the sky. The sky above them was full of dark clouds. It seemed that it would rain a bit. The man then smiled. Fine. I should also help out with what you prepared. Swish. Pung. In the morning, there was thunder and lightning, and then it rained. In preparation for such things, the group had bamboo hats if they needed to move, but they didn't dare in this heavy rain. No matter how much the body was protected using internal energy, the body would become exhausted if this was constantly done. Therefore, the Imperial Guards chose to deviate from their path for a while to look for shelter. Over there, Inspector. They discovered a shabby-looking guest house slightly outside the forest. As the group was soaked, they hurriedly moved inside. After they entered, the group sighed in relief. Phew. For a guest house to be in such a place. They had hoped for the rain to stop, but it didn't. They now finally felt some warmth. It seemed like it would rain for a while. Phew. Shoo. Every time Hong Nayan breathed, white smoke came from her lips. The moment she entered, she took off her hat and dried her clothes. Then raised her body's temperature using internal energy. The younger guards glanced at her. Her wet clothes clung to her body and showed off her curves. Ahem. Jinsung warned them with a cough. Hong Nayan, a little conscious of this, covered her body with both hands as her face flushed red. She was just embarrassed. Even in the middle of this, she was curious about Mumu's reaction. Could Mumu also be looking at her? But... Mumu seemed to not care and had already settled down inside as he looked around with bright eyes. It must be because he hadn't gotten to eat anything since the morning. Doesn't he have even the slightest interest in this? She was curious about Mumu. Meanwhile, an old man with a cane looked down from the second floor. Has to be them. The old man nodded. He had heard their description. A woman with a bow on her back, a royal inspector, and a group of imperial guards. But it was strange. How did they manage to get away from Kan Yen's grasp and make it all the way here? Who among them possessed such strength? The level of martial arts of the young man who seemed to be their leader was acceptable, but that was all. The variable. Is it him? The old man's eyes turned to the middle-aged man, who had a serious look on his face. Considering this person wasn't on the information list, he was likely someone from the academy. On the surface, he looked fine, but his martial arts were odd. But this was something that an average person wouldn't be able to know. Among those who trained intensely, some could not show their internal energy. It doesn't matter who it is. It would be the same as not being able to precisely grasp their level. Even though he had stepped away from frontline duties, he was still good enough. Now he was an old man whose level was not far behind the four great warriors. The old man looked at the middle-aged man, who was actually Mumu, and laughed. You will die first. Chapter 138. To the Imperial Palace. Part 4. Food had piled up the table. Everyone was absorbed with eating as they had to satisfy their hunger. And this was the same with Hong Nayan. It wasn't until the bowls were empty that they could start a conversation. It is raining so much, should we just stay here in the inn? Jin-sung looked out of the window at her question. Swish. As she just said, it was raining outside and it was impossible to see anything out. And it looked like it would rain all day, making their journey back delayed. This is troubling. Mumu was reassuring to have beside him, but the rain causes two problems. The first was that the longer their time back gets delayed, the more chances the enemies have to attack them. Since the ambush had failed once, now they would resort more unique means. And it rains like this, we cannot cross the river. Not far from here is a river. And it wasn't a small one but wide, which needed them to be on a boat or a raft. And with such rains the water level is bound to rise, making the current strong too. And if we cannot cross it, we will be delayed further. And that is just more ambushes onto them. Jin-sung said, I think we need to assess the situation correctly. The situation? Yes. It is raining heavily right now, so I think, as Lady said, we will have to stay within, but if the water level of the river ahead rises, the time gets longer with the currents getting stronger and the journey. It doesn't look like the rain will stop today though, and if the rain weakens a little, we might have to hurry up and cross the river before the flow of currents builds up. Then, the current at river must already be high considering the rain. Will the ferry people even float it? Jin-sung was also concerned regarding this. If the flow is strong, then even the ferry and boat will get pushed back and forth, so most people would choose to not float their boats. But continuing to delay their return could only bring more danger. While they were doing it, someone said this old man can lend you his ferry if you pay enough for it. Their eyes turned to the table next to them. A man with curved waist who seemed to be in his 70s was sipping alcohol. Jin-sung approached him and asked, Are you a sailor? He. Right. I run a raft with my sons at the river up. Then, would you move the rift for us? Isn't that what I just said? Sometimes it rains heavily on narrow rivers, and the current gets so strong, I tell you, so I tied it to a rope at the side of the river to keep it afloat. There had to be a way. If the rope had been connected to the land, then it was done in preparation for the strong currents. Jin-sung's face turned red. Even if the rain gets weaker, the current will become stronger, making it dangerous to even think about it for the sailors. I know. It is quite a dangerous task to take, so we will pay how much you want. These young friends are so upfront. The old man smiled as if he liked this. When the situation was going ahead, the officials too smiled, saying situation was going favorable for them. However, Hong Nayan was full of of this old man. And after some time the old man left them saying he was tired and told them to inform him when the rain comes down a little as he left for his room, and then she asked, "Doesn't something feel odd? No matter how high the payment is, this is too titled for us and—" "You mean a trick?" "Yes. I know it too." "You know it?" Jin-sung nodded at her question. He had already thought of this man being suspicious the first time he intervened into their conversation. As if waiting for it, the old man offered them the raft, and this made him unsure. "And the biggest? He isn't a sailor." "He isn't one?" "For a sailor, he light skin and no calluses on the left hand." Hong Nayan couldn't hide her surprise at this. She was surprised by how alert this man was to catch the suspicious guy within a short moment. As Jin-sung said, sailors tend to have tanned skins even if they wear bamboo hats. And they have calluses on their hands due to holding the long pole all day long and moving it, but the left hand was too clean and right hand held calluses. Looking at the placement of calluses, he seemed to be practicing blade for a long time. Depending on the weapon used, the calluses always appear in a different place, and in the view of Jin-sung the man is a thief or bandit. "Ah!" she exclaimed. This was expected from the royal inspector of palace. "You pretended to fall on purpose?" "Right. Then how will you respond?" Even if he pretended to fall of it, there had to be a way out of the trap the man dug. To which he looked at Mumu. It was difficult to figure out what the old man was aiming for, but fortunately they had Mumu swish. It was still raining out, but unlike the morning the rain was weaker so they could move, and so they headed to the river with this unknown old man who called himself a sailor. Despite the width of the river, the water level was high, making the currents strong. It was different from what they saw in the academy. "Oh. A rope." Jin-sung looked at where the official had pointed to. He was convinced this is a trap, so expected nothing to be around the river, but this was unexpected. Jin-sung thought that this was good. As long as the ropes were in good state, it meant they could use the river to cross using the raft. He. "Those kids there are my sons." The old man with bamboo hat pointed to the men coming out of the ferry. And their sight puzzled Jin-sung. It was a little far away, but they really seemed like sailors. Their appearance of looking dark-skinned was unmistakable. What? Did he actually get real people for this? As they got closer he looked close, but he couldn't get any traces of martial arts. Just ordinary people. Hong Nayan is also unsure. "Inspector Yu." "They are. We still don't know." Jin-sung shook his head. It was unknown if they were real boatmen hired by the man or just people hiding their internal energy. But if they are being called as sons, then he can talk to them and find something which doesn't make sense. But the old man said, "Are you warriors?" Jin-sung stopped at his words. What could the purpose behind this be? He didn't expect the man to suddenly ask such a thing, and this made everyone on alert. And he. "I am just asking because you could be my juniors. We can never know, right? It is the law of Murim to be aware of those who seem too good." Jin-sung's eyes shone. To call them junior meant he was revealing he is a warrior too. "Then you are a senior? Please tell us." Jin-sung was trying to get the big picture. He was skeptical, and the old man said, "It has been a long time since this old man retired up, so I don't know the young kids. I am Byakwun." "Byakwun?" Jin-sung's eyes widened. No one would not know his name. He was one of the top 10 warriors in the past and known for his strong stabbing technique. It has been more than n years since he retired, but the reputation wasn't forgotten yet. In response, Jin-sung raised his hands. "How can this junior not know you, sir?" "I am Junior Yu Jin-sung. SH. At that time, the old man grabbed Jin-sung's hand and shook the head shoe. "My sons will listen." "What is that supposed to mean?" "I have retired for a long time and I didn't reveal it to you to get such a greeting. I just retired from the scene and I revealed it so you would be comfortable to move." "Ah." Jin-sung felt so moved by his words. He hadn't cleared up the doubts, but he respected the goodwill the man had to his juniors. Hong Nian too let down her guard. At this sight, Byakwung smiled inside. Morons. The first time itself he noticed Jinsung looking at his body, and he knew that this inspector was keeping an eye on him, and so he revealed his identity right then to dispel any suspicions. So annoying, but this is fun. In fact, the old man thought if he had to kill them within the inn. But due to the people there, he decided to do this hidden like he was asked. Let them drown. The river further up and the water level rising with rain. And what if the river which the people clogged up breaks now? The halted water will rush down like a tsunami. Now. Let's cross over. Byakwung turned his head and smiled. This is worth watching. There were 4 rafts there, and considering their size, it is a weight of 4 horses and 4 people at most, excluding the sailor. And so they turned to groups. One with Mumu, Hong Nian, Kong Mui, and 1 person of Palace. That was to protect Hong Nian. Good. Byakwung thought it was good. Once they crossed the first raft together, he could break the embankment and turn to Mumu, the one with the most stern face. I will take his life after crossing the river. As he was thinking, Mumu looked at the people on the raft and stroked his chin. Kick. He turned the band around the arms, and seeing that Byakwung was confused, crack. // The muscles of Mumu swelled up and steam began to release from the body. Byakwung frowned at this. What is this? The sudden increase in the muscle was unforeseen even in his time as a warrior, but then something more unexpected happened. A dark-skinned boatman pulled out the beams to support the raft and push. Shoo! At that moment, the raft floated up. What are you doing? Mumu had lifted the raft. Everyone, let alone the sailors, couldn't hide their shock. Horses and the people up the raft would be heavy, so they didn't expect it to move that lightly. But more embarrassing, kukuku. They saw Mumu bending his knees as the raft moved. Byakwung stared to him, and then Kwang. The ground on which he was standing had collapsed, and Mumu, holding the raft, flew up the river. Swish. In the blink of an eye, Mumu and the raft moved across the river. Everyone felt dumbfounded at this. Did this make sense? Is this a dream? Is he human? How can he carry a raft across the river? Look there. And they saw Mumu put the horses down with the people and raise the raft again. It looked like he was tiring to move people across the river like this. And Byakwung had lost it at the sight.